Radio Retrofuture.
Well, good night, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Radio Retrofuture. And here with me tonight is a glass of absinthe and Atticus Oldman.
Greetings, my dear friend.
Yes, proprietor of the Steampunk Almanac and also host on the Absinth Affair. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Really nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I'm Atticus Oldman. I'm the, as you were saying, the host of the Absinth Affair web radio show on Neoswing Radio, which is on every Tuesday evening on neoswing.media. It's a 2-hour steampunk extravaganza of some of the sonic chicanery produced by some of the finest steampunk bands around the world.
Okay, and the Steampunk Almanac?
That's basically a website that I started off originally just to cater for my own interests in steampunk and hopefully to share my interest in steampunk with not just the community here in Scotland, but with everybody online. But the main interest was really to encourage and let people know in Scotland about what's actually happening with steampunk.
Yes, and speaking of Scotland, in one of your remarks about the upcoming show, you said you talked about Scotland's influence on steampunk. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you believe that influence is?
Well, Scotland's got an influence on steampunk in quite a number of ways. For example, when it comes to steampunk literature, I mean, there's the classic steampunk authors or icons, Jules Verne and Robert Louis Stevenson, Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, there's plenty of steampunk pirates, and there wouldn't be steampunk pirates if it wasn't for Treasure Island. And Robert Louis Stevenson was an Edinburgh laddie born and bred, and the inspiration for Treasure Island itself is a wee island off the coast of North Berwick, which is about 20 minutes outside of Edinburgh, called Bass Rock. So, there's Robert Louis Stevenson's work, the Jekyll and Hyde, with the elixirs and the storytelling side of things, which is a main part of steampunk. There's a science element. I mean, James Watt did a lot of his early work into steam here in Scotland and here in Edinburgh. So, I mean, there wouldn't be steam, as it were, if it wasn't for sort of like the Scottish input. A lot of fashion features tartan and plaid. And again, that it's a very kind of Scottish influence. So there's quite a few diverse elements of Scottish influence that can go into steampunk. Unfortunately, at the moment, it seems to be more a kind of, in a traditional sense. It's like it's a lot of authors from the past are current influence into steampunk. I'm not quite so sure about. I can't say that we're leading the field, as it were.
Scotland isn't leading the field, you say?
No, not at the moment.
No. But it is interesting what you said about the influence you speak of, the Scottish influence. You see steampunk more as a continuation of development started in the 19th century when it comes to storytelling and the kind of science they promoted and their vision of the future.
No, not really. I mean, it's sort of, I've always kind of viewed steampunk as an interpretation of Victoriana, of sort of like what actually happened historically, but with a modern twist. But I mean, it's like, for example, here in the festival at the moment, we have sort of like various tales relating to, Jekyll and Hyde, for example, that do have a definite sort of like steampunk twist to it. And, if it's like we help create maybe some of the classic icons of steampunk. But what we're actually, there's nobody at the moment actually that has the reins and is taking it forward, which is a little bit sad in its way, because I mean we've got these, in the centre of town we've got a fantastic castle. We've got sort of like we've got some beautiful sort of like buildings that could accommodate steampunk. It's like the garden's been sown, but the flowers haven't arisen yet.
What do you think the reason for that is? I mean, you're next to England, and you already said you've got all these connections with it. So why hasn't it developed yet?
I'm not really sure about that, to be truthful. The main steampunk scene in the UK, it has to be said, up until very, very recently, we've had a couple of really successful festivals take place in the North England. Recently, Airship North Star in particular, which was a fantastic success, and the Splendid Day Out in Morecambe. They're both quite far north. But the majority of happenings and events really takes place in the South England. So the main problem with steampunk in Scotland at the moment is getting, if a band, for example, is going to be touring, a steampunk band is going to be touring, the chances are they're coming from the south of England. And if they're coming all the way up to Scotland, then they don't want to be playing just one or two gigs. They want to be playing 4 or 5, maybe one in Glasgow, one in Edinburgh, one in Aberdeen, Dundee, And that framework at the moment maybe isn't in place for them, so they see it as a wee bit of a risk. Or they make the mistake and come up during the festival time, because the Edinburgh Festival's on at the moment, and that swamps everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you do have had some festivals. You had Groggy Dairy Gala in 2014.
Yeah, it's unfortunately though that gala's now closed down, so that's no longer going to be happening. We've had a few steampunk events, but they're quite small events. This is the thing,
Well, the thing with small events, I must say, we had Emporium Vernesk in the Netherlands, which also happened to be very close by me. But they do create a very tight-knit community with also often a much better creative output, so to speak, than the large events.
Yeah.
The large events are good to get publicity, so you've got that to reach that kind of equilibrium, I guess. But are there no current steampunk events coming this year, or
in Scotland?
Yeah.
Not steampunk events as such, no. I mean, what I'm actually trying to put together an online event that's hopefully going to encourage people to see Scotland as more a place to come to. But that's going to be 90% of that's going to be online. That's going to be more an advertisement of what could happen. But because there's a funny situation really with the festivals here in Scotland. I mean, we had a lovely, great, small festival scene happening, and it was really blossoming. It was taking a lot away from the largest festivals. Now, I'm not talking about steampunk here, I'm talking about music festivals in general. And then we had the foot and mouth disease outbreak, which basically killed a lot of stuff dead. And while the South has recovered quite well on the music front for that, it's only really in the last 3-4 years here in Scotland we're starting to see the small community festivals taking off again out in the rural areas. Because, I mean, it's a lot. We could have a steampunk festival here in Edinburgh in the middle of the Edinburgh Fringe. It would get swallowed. There'd be no point for it. But we've got all these beautiful country houses outside the Edinburgh. We've got, as I say, North Berwick, where Robert Louis Stevenson grew up. They've got Fringe by the Sea, which is a wonderful event. We could maybe do something steampunk related at something like that. Have a steampunk parade or a steampunk market.
Right.
But again, the problem is a lot of the retailers that would go to, say, the Asylum or to the Phoenix Festival or Airship North Star are really sort of like English-based. They're not. They're having to come quite a distance, and that all caters into the costs, which would make it quite an expensive proposition for the participants coming up. So what's really needed here to kind of kick-start things on the festival front is a sponsor, or maybe getting together a team steampunk, where, you know, a few interested parties could maybe come together and iron out how we could actually introduce a sort of like, you know,
a strategy, as it were.
A strategy. Because, I mean, at the moment, I'm not saying it's virgin territory here in Scotland. I mean, there is steampunk groups. You know, there's the Facebook groups. There's one for Edinburgh, there's one for Glasgow, and there's also one for Lothian. But the problem is they're there, and that can lead to a good night out in the pub. But the facilities and the resources aren't there to actually host a festival as such, as yet.
Yeah, so you're basically looking for that opportunity to, you know, spread the word and get a festival off the ground. Right?
Definitely. But at the moment, this is where the Absinth Affair came into it initially, when I had the chance to actually do the radio show. The main emphasis was sort of like introducing steampunk into Scotland and making the wider steampunk community know about Scotland and actually think, well, you know, Scotland might not be a bad wee place. If we're going to go up to visit the Edinburgh Festival, let's pack our top hat and our goggles and actually see what, you know, steampunk events there is up there. And it's slowly, now we're getting more and more sort of like, you know, things happening that could actually attract a steampunk while they're up here. So, you know, the facilities are definitely moving, you know. And the Absinth Affair is, as I say, is catered to introducing, you know, some of the locals, really, into the benefits of what steampunk music is. Because you get a lot of people dotting about in Edinburgh, you know, and they'll be sitting there with, you know, it's like, they look steampunk, and they're wearing steampunk clothes. And it's like, and they'll say, oh, you steampunk? They go, no, what is this steampunk? I hear about steampunk. And it's like, then you say, well, you know, it's these type of movies, and it's like, it's this type of music, and it's this type of fashion. And they go, oh, I've been steampunk half my life. I just never knew it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
There's an awful lot of that.
Yeah, well, it's, the whole retrofuturism is, and vintage stuff is, you know, getting more popular in general.
Yes.
And, you know, there's also, you know, we talked about this on the Anachronistic Society. I don't know if you've seen it, number 4. But we talked about this, how steampunk has basically piggybacked on geek culture. In a way. But so yeah, maybe there is also a connection you can make over there. But what do you do on the Absinth Affair? Do you only present steampunk bands, or do you also have conversations over there?
No, we've been starting recently to do more and more interviews. It's mostly music based. But because the Almanac website has the Absinth Affair web companion, if I record an interview and use part of the interview on the show, then I can use the longer full interview. I can put that online on the Absinth Affair web companion. For example, Nathaniel Johnston, we had a lovely interview with Nathaniel and Dogwood from the Nathaniel Johnston band. And it was going to be a 10-minute interview. 25 minutes into the thing, you know, we realised we were going to have to maybe trim it down to get it to fit into the radio show. Mm-hmm. So we did that lovely, and that went out on the air, and it was really great. But you didn't get the whole picture. Mm-hmm. Right. So the whole interview itself, that later went on, and that was a SoundCloud file that people could listen to at any time. Nathaniel gets it for his own use. It's the same with the Steampunk Stompers. So I've interviewed Mark from the Stompers a couple of times now. Lovely chap. You should get him on the show.
Yeah.
And he has been such a mine of information about what's actually happening in, you know, sort of places further afield. I mean, sort of like the show seems to be quite popular over in the Miami area where Mark is. He's done a lot of, you know, promotion there for the show. And we're really, really lucky with the support that the show's actually had with the music community. Not just here in the UK. I mean, you know, folk like the Wattingers and sort of like the Mysterious Freak Show and Titty Von Trans from Cabaret Berlin, they've been absolutely fantastic. But there's the Steampunk Stompers in Miami. There's Nathaniel Johnston over in Seattle, and then there's the New Jacobean Club from Canada, who have been fantastic from the very beginning. Excellent support for the show. So, you know, it's really raised the profile of what we're doing, as well as sort of like helping them get maybe some, you know, a wider audience here in the UK for what they're actually doing, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, it is a small scene after all, so, you know, you really need, you know, each other to spread the word. And I don't know how it's over there, but here I get the impression, because I also do presentations and of course I do this show, and a lot of people within the community don't seem to think past their costumes. I often tend to get the impression till you know, they listen to my presentations, they start to think, oh wait, I could actually do more with this. I don't know if that's your experience as well.
To a degree, I'd say there's different roads into steampunk. You know, some see the costumes and go, "Oh, I've got to get me some of that," and then, you know, they get into the clothing, and then sort of like, you know, they'll maybe realise the accessories, some of the, you know, the goggles and the bits and pieces that go with the artificial arms, the armour, you know, and bits and pieces like that, and then maybe sort of like, well, you know, that leads them into the music. You get other folk like myself, who the music was what got me interested in the first place. The costumes and the sort of like, you know, what people wear is important and is grand, but that's not where my heart and soul lies. It's the actual music that gets me,
Right.
as well as, you know, I mean, folks say, where did steampunk come from? You know, and it's like, well, when I was growing up, I mean, sort of like, you know, I'm not giving my age away here, like, but say in 1970, I'd be sitting watching my black and white TV, and it'd be things like, it'd be First Men in the Moon, you know, Disney films, and it was sort of like, there's a perfect steampunk movie, First Men in the Moon, with Lionel Jeffries, 1964 it was made. If you haven't seen it, get the DVD. It's a fantastic treat. So I mean, but that came out in 1964. So I mean, you know, where did it all come from? You know, I grew up sort of like watching that, and it's sort of like, so when I saw the steampunk fashion and the steampunk ethos, it was already familiar.
Well, when you look at, you know, at steampunk as a kind of as a historical concept, it doesn't really introduce that much new things. You know, a lot of the aesthetic already existed, like you said, in the 60s, and you know, what are important inspirations for the movement? You got like Metropolis, 1926. You know, stuff like that, and it's still replicated by a lot of people in the community. So it's kind of funny how, but you know, steampunk combined that aesthetic, you know, all those historical aesthetic streams and philosophies into a single, you know, philosophy, and combined it with the DIY culture and punk and cyberpunk and goth. So it really is a wonderful salad, if you will, of all those styles. You probably not get too deep into this, but you know, one of those things that we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, was that, you know, there are so few dominant subcultures right now in the mainstream. Punk movement still exists, but it's very, well, I wouldn't say underground, but you know, at that level. You know, the same goes for goth, which has, for a great deal, has been assimilated by steampunk. There are only so many shades of black, as a friend of mine described it, and stuff like that. And also because they lacked vision, in my opinion. You know, there were philosophers, you know, ex-punkers that already said this about punk in the 80s, like, it's not going anywhere. And that's probably also one of the reasons that I want to have this show, and I want people's opinions out there. Show people there is a vision in steampunk, and there is a thing we can, you know, for the common good, so to speak. And I think steampunk fills in that niche. It's that one subculture that does seem to, come just like this up in the mainstream. It's not entirely there yet, but it could be.
It really depends where you're looking as well. I mean, okay, there hasn't maybe been a massive steampunk blockbuster movie as of yet. There's been close. Some of the Alice in Wonderland, stuff is very kind of close in that in a lot of ways, I feel. But there's a lot of smaller steampunk movie projects, exactly. Which if people knew about them, would be huge. Yep. It's the same with the. I mean, I get this free book newsletter. And it gives you a list of sort of like free and sort of like discounted books. And I'm noticing there's a lot more steampunk books coming through. And really the literature side of things has been going great guns the last few years and has been breaking down a lot of barriers. But it's something that nobody really knows about, And
it really is like, It's really like it's going in there from all these different places. It's people don't know where to look. I think people don't know it's there. People don't know where to look, and I think that's also a part of the I wouldn't say problem, but a reason why. It doesn't really reach the mainstream. Once again, streamed 2 weeks ago, we kind of philosophized that steampunk also lacks a face. Like video games has Mario, Sonic, for the heretics. Steampunk doesn't has that yet. And because a lot of the media, steampunk-related media, is really focused on the aesthetic side of things. Storytelling aspect, there's that. There was somewhere else I wanted to go with that.
Well, the thing is, I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing stuff that, as I say, people don't get to really hear about. Because, I mean, really, it's a lot to do with is sort of like, if you're actually doing something steampunk, right, how do you promote it? Well, you think Facebook would be perfect for it. So there's a lot of the Facebook groups are fabulous. But there's other Facebook groups, you post once and you get nothing but bloody grief off the admin. You didn't post that in the left-hand tick box, and it's not dressed in green and you weren't wearing wellies while you were doing it and you wear your watch on the wrong side, by the way. It's like, bugger off, I just wanted to post something about the show next week. Steampunks are chatty. Steampunks want to communicate. We want to share, we want to show off what we do. But there isn't that many formats for it.
Yeah.
And the formats that are out there, people in a lot of ways have to ease up. I mean, it's not like we're all trying to sell you Ray-Bans. It's like we're not all trying to sell sunglasses. Some of us actually do have a good point to make. And a lot of the admins, if they eased up a wee bit, then folk would chill out a lot more. I really do believe. But there isn't really, as you were saying, about a face for steampunk at the moment. And a lot of that is, it's like, people put their heads up above the precipice. And, that's really what we need is, a few faces of steampunk. For every time sort of like somebody puts their head up, it's like a coconut shy. Everybody starts taking pot shots at them.
Yeah.
That has to sort of like, people have to be a wee bit more respectful.
Yeah, well, I had, not me personally, but, there were some people who came on the stream who said something as a matter of joke. People got so riled up over those things. I had Andy Fraser also during that stream, and we were talking about, the protagonist of steampunk, and, so we kind of need a steampunk Jesus, as a joke on Facebook that I made.
Yeah.
Like, oh yes, this person proclaims himself the Steampunk Jesus, but it was just get people curious about what is that all about, and it was nothing more than that. It was like out of context remark, so to speak. But that person actually got grief over that.
Yeah.
For a joke I made, and people didn't even watch the stream, so they had no idea what you're talking about.
But that That's Facebook in general. That's not just steampunks that do that. I mean, that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, we need people to actually be able to sort of like, get up and actually say, I love steampunk. There's so many different types of steampunk. I'm going to show you what I like to help you find what you like. What there has been and hasn't gone down well is folk going, this is steampunk. And this all there is about steampunk. That isn't steampunk. And it's like, well, nobody's fit to actually decide that. It's like, there's no rules, there's no regulations, It's all about imagination. It's about breaking down barriers, extending the boundaries. It's not ring fencing stuff away. Once you start putting fences around stuff and go, this is mine, then you've lost it.
Well, there was, I think you know very well who I'm talking about, an artist who got banned from TeslaCon.
Yes, I followed that originally as it was happening, and that was shocking. That person's banned from my radio show as well. We won't mention any names, but it was the antithesis of steampunk. It was anti-steampunk what actually was happening. It was shocking. The disrespect was just brutal. But what it did show was it actually united a lot of people together that maybe wouldn't have been communicating, and it united people actually across different art forms. You would get makers talking to musicians and saying, well, that bullying actually happens in our community, our side of the community as well, and we've been trying to deal with that. And the musicians are saying, really, well, it's been happening to us. And people are saying, we're not going to put up with the bullies, and we're not going to put up, people being like aggressive in their opinions. I mean, we all love a good debate. I'm Scottish. I can't live without argument. God almighty, it's in my genes. But you do it with respect of the other person's opinions and their point of view. I mean, us Scots are funny. I've got a mate, every time I call him a cantankerous old bastard, he hugs me. He sees that as the best compliment on the planet. But you say that to an English person, I'd probably get to jail,
Yeah, exactly.
So you've kind of got to, you've kind of got to watch how you behave. But bullying and aggressive, we know it when we see it,
Right.
And it can tear apart our communities, But I think a lot of people are scared to actually put their head up and say, I'd love to maybe make, a weekly podcast about steampunk fashion. But am I going to get it in the neck if I do that? Am I going to end up, getting abuse online? Am I going to be able to post stuff without, attracting the trolls?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I have been, when I started blogging on Top of Our Steampunk in 2013, I was trying to be, all nice, not offending anyone, but I didn't get any feedback. So I started to, write more and more confronting articles. And still no feedback, but people were reading the blog. So, I don't know. I think a lot of people find the confronting material refreshing, but they don't speak up for it.
But people want debate. They want people to argue their case, but they don't want it to be disrespectful. I don't think.
No, that's what I try to achieve on the Anachronistic Society, to get a team of people together and let them have polite conversations about what they think on certain subjects. Sometimes they can be more serious, like last week. What if steampunk would become mainstream in society as we know it? And right now we're thinking of doing something a little more lighthearted, but it might become very political. But what kind of governments would steampunk dictators create? Something like that.
Well, there's quite a lot of debate here. The UK, well, obviously Britain had the Empire, And, you know, can you actually sort of like, you know, be steampunk and talk about, you know, the British Empire without actually praising a whole lot of nastiness that actually went on in the Empire? You know, the Empire wasn't a nice place.
No.
You know, no empire is, and the British Empire was as nasty as any other empire. A lot of good things came out, you know, same as the Roman Empire, but we can't excuse the nastiness. No. And those that use it as an excuse for saying, I mean, I've heard folks say, well, steampunk's a very British thing, or steampunk's a very English thing. And it's like, no, it's no. I mean, sort of like, you know, do you like Jules Verne, for example? He's pure steampunk. He's French, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things. And, you know, I'd like to get Suna Desi on, you know, Steampunk India.
Oh, yes. Well, she's Edinburgh-based.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I haven't got a hold of her yet, so she hasn't responded to my messages.
She's very, very, very busy.
Yeah, I heard something like that. So I hope to, you know, have a healthy conversation with some people about that, because I also... You know, I'm not sure you are familiar with terms like cultural appropriation and stuff like that. Because I also read some really poisonous articles on the subject of multiculturalism in steampunk, and those people also have been blocked, even though I never met or spoke to them. So yeah, red flag.
It's you know, it's funny how some folk can kind of, you know, react that way. I mean, it's again, you've got to have the debate. I mean, one of the things that I used to do before steampunk, I used to run the Edinburgh International Internet Festival here in Old Reekie. That basically attracted artists from all over the world, and there was quite a few from the Caribbean. So obviously, sort of like, you know, at the time, you know, we were saying sort of like, you know, we were talking about sort of like the Scottish involvement in the slave trade, for example. And, you know, places like, there's still places like Dundee, I think it is sort of like where some of the buildings still have African slave faces with sort of like rings through their noses and stuff like that. And folk are saying, you know, you've got to tear that down. Well, if you tear that down and take that away, it gets forgotten about. Exactly. You've got to point that and say, look at the horrible things that we did. Look at the way we were willing to treat people, you know. And it's like we can incorporate, you know, sort of like that side of history into our steampunk world, our steampunk novels, for example.
Educate people, you know, provide context.
Educate.
You know,
exactly.
and create heroes. You need conflicts in your stories. Why not let it be about that?
Exactly.
And now we are confronted with people who want the expressions by Martin Luther King taken down. Like, oh my God.
We've got people here in the UK, with Brunel, the great sort of like engineer. Right. Yeah. You rest in peace. Yeah. Loved the cigar. And there's photographs of him with a big cigar. And there's people airbrushing the cigar out his photographs. That's how ridiculous it is.
It's vandalism.
It's changing history. It's making history appear like something it wasn't. And that's our job.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the steampunks. That's our job.
Yeah. Oh my God. And airbrushing it. Just like the communists did with Trotsky and all those opponents of Stalin. It's
exactly. Yeah, it leads to censorship, which leads to oppression. You know,
we kind of derailed this conversation, but I don't mind. Let's see. You know, I think this is a good question to ask you. How would you describe steampunk music for people who never heard of it? And what kind of musicians would you suggest to people, people who are not accustomed to alternative music styles?
Oh, you're a nasty so-and-so, so yeah, that's a hell of a question. Well, to start off with, I don't believe there's such a thing as steampunk music, right? As such, right? There's music that steampunks listen to, and there's music that influences steampunk.
That's the first thing Montague Jacques Fromage told me. Exactly that thing. Yeah.
He's a wise man, our Monty, a very wise man, and a fantastic musician, by the way.
Yeah.
But some of the genres of music that influence steampunk, well, there's that many. I mean, you know, when I first got into it, I mean, a lot of people got into it via the goth scene, you know. There were goths that sort of like grew up and discovered brown, you know, instead of black, and they became steampunk, you know. But I never really got that much into the goth scene. I was more into the heavy metal scene, and then later on the dance scene, you know, Shaman and sort of like, you know, the Orb and bands like that. And so the steampunk music has so many different flavours. I mean, you look at the Asylum that's coming up over here. I mean, you know, we've got Steam Powered Giraffe coming over and doing their a cappella type vocal harmonies. And, you know, then you've got Victor Sierra coming over and doing their heavy industrial, a wonderful
Yeah, them on the show as well, yeah.
Commander Bob, a lovely chap,
yeah.
you know. And then on the same bill, you've got an Italian band, the Experiment Number Q, which are basically bringing over a steampunk rock opera, which is going to blow folk away at the Asylum.
What were they called? Steampunk?
They're called the Experiment Number Q.
Okay.
They're from Italy, and they're going to be at the Asylum on the 27th on the same bill. I think it's the United States of Steampunk.
Mm-hmm.
A fantastic bill. There's Victor Sierra and Frenchie in the Punk as well. We had a great chance a few years ago in the festival we actually see here in Edinburgh. And you know, and there's so many different types of music. If I was going to say to somebody that never heard steampunk music, you know, I would try and find out what they ordinarily listen to.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
If they're into rock music, then I would say something along the lines of Johnny Hollow or maybe Metropolis or Birthright or somebody like that. If they came more from the kind of the dancey scene, I would say sort of like maybe Victor Sierra or possibly somebody like Frenchie in the Punk, you know, with a sort of like that kind of cabaret kind of vibe going on. And then what's kind of been a kind of popular kind of vibe here in Edinburgh is the kind of the Romany kind of sort of like scene, Romany kind of rock, where sort of like it's, you know, it's basically Balkan blues and sort of like jazz and high tempo sort of like, you know, dance music.
Right.
But what's really popular here in Edinburgh at the moment is the swing scene. It's maybe more kind of diesel punk.
Right.
But here in Edinburgh, I mean, that's really taken off. There's a real kind of 1920s kind of vibe happening.
Neoswing.
Neoswing, but not so much electric swing. You know, I mean, it's like the high sort of techno kind of side of things. No, this is more kind of the original kind of, you know, it's singer-songwriter type stuff. It's maybe more kind of Scott Bradley than sort of like the electric swing orchestra. You know.
Oh, okay. Well, just out of my curiosity, would you do you think Neoswing will make an impact on the steampunk community?
I think it might. See, there's a lot of bands coming up at the moment, and there's a lot of bands that are about to release albums that cover quite a few of the genres. That are kind of out there. What I have noticed, what I'd say really on the music side of things, is there's a lot of bands now that are producing music where English isn't the language that they're maybe singing in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and that's great because that's making it more a kind of international kind of community. You know, it's less kind of UK and America kind of sort of like centred. Which is always kind of, maybe that's just my sort of like, because I'm viewing it from the UK, but it has up until recently it seemed to be very kind of UK and American centred, where it's lovely to hear stuff coming out of Hungary and Czechoslovakia and sort of like, you know, Holland and Germany and places like that. It's fabulous, you know, and it's bloody good music, you know.
Yeah. But now you are talking about how up and coming the music scene is. What do you think will make it? What will become more prominent in the mainstream? You think the steampunk music scene or the steampunk aesthetic?
Well, to be honest, if I can answer that in two parts, right? If I take the aesthetic first of all, I don't know how much choice if we don't start taking control and actually sort of like, when I say taking control, I don't mean sort of like setting rules, or say that's steampunk, that's no steampunk. But it's like, if we don't get together people that's willing to give steampunk a voice, then it's going to be McDonald's that's going to be giving it a voice. They're going to be giving away steampunk figures with a Happy Meal. It's going to be sort of like, it's going to be people jumping on to make a quick buck. And big corporations, which is going to basically take it. It happens to all music. It's look what happened to punk originally. Punk was it was a rebel music that was anarchic. It was going to break down barriers. It was going to change the world. And now you've got some of the exponents of the original punk music selling butter in adverts. It got sad. That's going to happen at some point anyway, to some of it,
Exactly.
But if we can keep the core flame burning bright by bringing in new styles and new influences and taking original influences and maybe influences that are out there and changing it. This is where things like steampunk Star Wars becomes important, because it's taking something that wasn't there 50 years ago and changing it to a steampunk thing. It's taking something that's more kind of relatively recent and giving it a steampunk twist. So why not sort of like steampunk Battlestar Galactica, for example. And there's plenty of things out there that we can be adapted for steampunk. But what we really need is the new steampunk.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is where the music, I think, is being important, because even though there isn't such a thing as steampunk music as such, there's some bloody good music out there which is attracting people into the steampunk ethos, and they're seeing what else is out there. Plus, as well, I think it's only a matter of time. There's a couple, I can't remember the guy's name. There's a visual artist that Lord Monty introduced a lot of people to. He does these beautiful paintings, steampunk paintings. It's Victorian scenes with airships flying.
Vadim?
Could very well be.
He does these really wonderful
watercolors,
cyberpunk, retro-futuristic, Victorian era stuff.
Could be the very chap I'm talking about. But we need half a dozen of him. We need to clone him. We need to give the steampunk writers more attention, because people like Ichabod Temperance, and sort of like there's another steampunk show here in the UK called Gasp, which is an absolutely fantastic. It was the inspiration for a lot of what I do. And both the people that run that, L.M. Cook and Stephen C. Davis, are authors, and they do a lot of work with this fabulous little bookshop down South Cart Books, which is getting together a fantastic writers community. Which they're doing readings, they're having workshop classes about how you can write your own sort of like steampunk novels, and they're encouraging each other, and it's wonderful. And every town should have one. And when there's an event, it's L.M. Cook and Stephen Davis and that, they're taking what they do out to the festivals and out to the events, and they're actually encouraging other people to get into writing what they're doing, and that's what we need. But we need, instead of half a dozen people doing it, we need a couple of hundred people doing it.
Right. Well, actually, I think I want to have another episode of the Anachronistic Society on that topic. So if you would, join us on that panel,
Be delighted.
Yes, I think that would be a very good strategic meeting, so to speak. Because, like you said, we need, strategy to prevent, before we go the way of goth and all those subcultures that had great potential, but a lack of vision, only so many shades of black, and now I'm hearing a lot of steampunks complain there's only so many shades of brown. So yeah, I'm working on something, but I hope to have the first episode of that done begin September.
All right.
So yeah, but I could give you a preview if you want. Also, you mentioned filmmakers. This September, we debut our Retrofuture cinema, which is a physical steampunk cinema, basically. We're going to put up on a small event here in the Netherlands, where I'm now asking filmmakers that I may show their trailers or short films, and get some public movies like Metropolis, so people can come in the tent and see just get introduced to steampunk films or steampunk inspired films.
So it's absolutely fantastic, and that's the kind of thing it's needing done. Sort of like I mean, there seems to be a lot happening in the Netherlands, but it's here in Scotland. It's as I say, the main kind of sort of like communities in the south of England, and now that is spreading out, and it's a lot happening in Wales at the moment. It's kind of gone over the border into Wales, where like the Phoenix Alternative. There's just been a Steampunk Wales event just this last weekend, and folk are loving it. And it's like it's attracting the people along. Here in Scotland, I mean, one of the worst things about the arts in Edinburgh, and a lot of us artists actually feel it, is the festival in Edinburgh isn't that good for the artist community in Edinburgh. As strange as that sounds, because for 1 month you've got the city, everything's alive, and the funders are really pouring money into it, and Edinburgh Council are really supportive. And then when the festival's finished, it's really hard to get a band playing in a local pub, because all the regulations, and one person complains and it's shut down. And it's really hard to get a sort of like, I say we wanted a steampunk film festival. Rules and regulations make it really hard to say take it into a community centre and host it in there. It's like, and it's outside of the festival. Edinburgh, for example, they've just had a national survey of live music in the UK. Edinburgh came 19th. We're Scotland's capital, and we came 19th in the UK for live music, which is disgusting. It really is. But people try to change it, and the officialdom side of things just slaps them down. If it's outside of the festival, then it ain't going to happen. And if it happens inside of the festival, which is happening at the moment, right? Edinburgh's quite a small city. There's 30,000 shows happening over the next month. Wow. 30,000 shows.
That's quite amazing, yeah.
It's ridiculous, Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we're nearly an hour in. So, or is there something you wanna? Do you have a message for the audience about people you want to promote, or special shows you want to announce, or?
Well, later on in the year, I'll be telling folk about the Brass Web, which is going to be an online arts festival, steampunk themed, where, for example, I'd maybe like to invite yourself to actually host maybe a wee special program during it, maybe about festivals around the world.
Yeah, well, we can always discuss it after the show if you want.
Excellent. There's the Absinth Affair show, which is on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. UK time via newscan.media. It's 2 hours every week of sort of like steampunk sonic chicanery and musical mayhem. And it's not so much my show as I like to feel it belongs to the community. Every week when we have it, or almost every week, it didn't happen this week because I messed up, but most weeks when the show's on, we have a live Facebook group where people can chat away while they listen to the show.
Right.
So, and that is that's getting together a lovely little community of people from all over the UK and abroad, basically just sort of like, chatting while the show's on. But as well, what we like to do is we like to sort of like, when the event's posted, say, start posting your news now. So people, if they've got a new single out, they can share it there. If they've got a festival that they've been to and they want to post some photographs, they can put it there. If they're a band that's going to be sort of like playing, like Kiss Like Ether, a lovely UK band that's doing a lot of work at the moment, if they're going to a festival event, they'll post on what they're doing there. The Wattingers, if they've got a video, they'll post it there. And they feel that they can do it. They know now that Paul, is it all right if I do this? They don't have to ask. They can go and do it. But I give them the respect that they're not going to start posting
Exactly.
silly stuff.
Yeah, maybe I should also do something like that, because I also really want to have a new segment only to gather the news myself. I simply don't have the time for that.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the next thing, really, is the development of the Steampunk Almanac and the web companion for the Absinth Affair. It's like the web magazine that's related to it. I'm going to be combining them both together because the Almanac now, I think it's just under 4 years old. So it's time for a complete sort of like, energization of what it's actually doing. So if anybody's got any ideas or they want to maybe become involved in it, because I'm thinking, if somebody's, their main interest is, say, sort of like steampunk fashion, and they'd like to maybe do, something about steampunk fashion, then they'd be more than welcome. The only thing I don't want to do is compete with some of the other steampunk sites that are operating in the UK, because there isn't that many of us. But what's out there, it's like, we've got Steampunk Journal, for example, wonderful resource. Matt does a lot of sort of like writing of sort of like steampunk articles. I don't want to compete with him. I want to communicate and cooperate with people like that. So it's looking at the future of the Almanac, how to enhance it, how to develop it, that's going to not tread on anybody's toes or, steal anybody else's thunder, but maybe put in something where we can actually work together and develop it. So there's a lot of good things going to be happening on that front.
Yeah, I think cooperating in that way will benefit both parties in the long run, because you look at YouTube and how YouTube works. I will say something about that when we end. But when people make videos with and make collaborations, people will watch those channels as well. They'll this maker likes that maker. Oh, I have to check that maker out. So I think that that in the long run that will benefit everyone. When that happens, but I'm trying to reach out to other content creators for that purpose, but I think we need to do a lot more of this.
Yeah, but but what you're doing, it shows the future. I mean, this is the way forward. You're out there, you're communicating, and you're willing to cooperate. which is perfect. But you know, we need to clone you, mate. We need to get half a dozen just like you.
Well, this is a way that people can help. First of all, for those who are watching, please like these videos. Liking videos like this or that of other steampunk related channels will tell YouTube that we want more of this content out there. Also, if you enjoy my content, please subscribe. I need a lot more of you to, get noticed on a site like YouTube, unfortunately, because of the way how YouTube works right now. And also, for you who really love me, I also have a Patreon. For those who want to, I have a number of rewards on that Patreon, so check those out. And I think I will just end the show with this message. So Atticus, thank you very much for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you again on this channel. And for everyone back home, I hope to see you all soon, and as always, make it your way. Good night.